A very brief session. So thank you so much, everyone, for making time to attend today's session. As I've told you last week was the last content class. This week we were very fortunate to have a cartoonist, a very well-known Malaysian cartoonist, Mr. Azmi, that you met just now. For those who were not able to attend, the recording will be made available. He didn't really talk about his drawings per se. He talked more about his story, how he got into it, and what continues to motivate and inspire him despite his many challenges. So if you looked at it from the perspective of the kind of things we have been talking about in class, he basically spoke about his author-defined social reality, right? So I'm glad, like Shah and me earlier, I'm glad you all engaged with him from that perspective, meaning you did not look at the text and ask him to dissect stuff. You looked at the macro level. You didn't look at the micro level. I'm glad you got that, you know. So and a lot of the things that he was sharing, it's exactly what we started the semester with by looking at statements by K.S. Maniam, like Fernando, Muhammad Ajisai. I just love the way the whole thing kind of came together. I mean, we didn't plan for it this way. I didn't even know this cartoonist was going to come and speak to us at the beginning of the semester. So I love how God works in wonders. You know, I love how the whole thing came together. So it's not too late if you are interested to work on his corpus. If you are interested, so I checked Kinokuniya. The mama, the little mama is not there. Tanjung Life and Lost in Bagan is available, but the little mama is not available in Kinokuniya. I mean, that would be the first book I would want to read and start writing a paper on, because I'm anak mami, you know. So but if you are interested to work on his corpus, you may, because we are only starting the journey for your final project. But otherwise, I would really like to hear what you are planning to work on, even if you are thinking in rough ideas. I would like to know what you're planning to work on, and I would like to meet you once before the year ends, preferably during class next week, because I looked at my schedule. It's like every other day, every day afterwards is just so full. So I'm glad my class time is blocked. Otherwise, even those times will be taken up by meetings and stuff. So I am free next week, 2 to 5. If I'm not mistaken, I'm also free slightly in the morning, like lunchtime and stuff. So for those in Malaysia, if you want to meet me earlier, that's fine. But I would really like to meet you once on the 27th December, either morning or during class. So, but for today, I want to know, number one, I want to know what you plan to do. And number two, what aspect of the corpus are you planning to study or explore, right? And the third is, if you have a kind of a thesis statement, meaning if you have a proposal of what it is you want to prove through this research on this corpus by a Malaysian writer. Okay, so I want to hear your thoughts. Of course, whatever you tell me today, and then next week, you know, you have 1 week, and then in the course of the 1 week, you may fine tune your work. You may come up with a slightly different, modified issue. You may even reconsider your corpus. That's okay. But by the end of this month, I want you to have a final proposal of what you plan to work on. Yeah. I will then give you another task to work on before the next class in January. Okay, so I want to hear your thoughts. Who wants
Yes,
to?
doctor. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, Salim. Yes.
I'm sorry, it's still morning in
No
Iraq, so
problem.
that's why we get confused. Doctor, I have sent my, draft on the WhatsApp group. So can Ruby help me just to show it, please,
Sure.
Doctor? Sorry.
Just a second.
Yes, Doctor, I can see it.
Oh, who's sharing this?
Ruby, I do believe.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Ruby. Ruby, are you the
Thank
one
you, Ruby.
sharing
Thank you
this?
so much.
Brilliant. Okay.
Is it okay, Doctor? Shall I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, in fact, Doctor, to tell the truth, I thought about, making my final project about the cultural identity crisis of Indian diaspora in The Return by K.S. Manian. So I just, I have, made just like a framework of my final project, the abstract. I will start with the abstract. The issue of cultural identity is one of the prominent worries faced the migrated Indian diaspora in Malaysia during colonial period. The Return was among the literary works that depicted the lives of Indian diaspora, which has been written by K.S. Maniam in 1981. This distinctive literary work marked as a paradigm shift in the Malaysian literature in English. Ravi, the main character and the narrator of the novel, represents the Indian diaspora experience in the host country. His attempts to mix up with the new community and that was full of traps. The main objectives of this paper are to shed light on the cultural crisis and the sufferings of Indian minority, particularly the protagonist Ravi, who tried to create his own identity away from his ancestors' identity, which form the man's entity. According to Hall, the cultural identity has been defined as a matter of becoming as well as of being. It belongs to the future as much as to the past. It is not something which already exists, transcending places, time, history, and culture. This paper intends to deal with the Ravi's identity conflict and also deals with his attempts to escape from his own identity as an Indian guy by joining the English school and learn English language, which is a colonial one for him. But at the end, he discovered the false of his allegations and preconceptions about language later. He returned about language. Later, he returned back to the right path and started to work again in the rubber plantation. So that's all about my abstract, and then I choose some keywords for this research, which is identity, cultural identity, race, gender, Indian post-colonial period, and then inshallah ta'ala I will start with introduction, then literature review, and then conceptual theory, textual analysis, then conclusion, Doctor. Inshallah. Thank you.
Okay. My first thought, my initial ideas, because I'm just Googling as you're talking, I'm just Googling right now those ideas. My first thought would be the originality of this topic, because the novel is a very well-read, well-researched corpus by K.S. Maniam, not just by Malaysian scholars, but also by international scholars. Because of that, this topic might not have any significant, I'm not saying none at all, I'm saying maybe it might not have any significant impact, right? So the whole idea of the project is, even if you don't want to publish something from it right now, later you might want to. And if that is the case, the proposal must try to find a niche area right? A kind of a gap in this discussion. So let's unpack this a little bit. You want to look at identity crisis, the cultural
Yes.
identity crisis in this particular novel. Besides, it's all right, Lisa, I understand. Besides um, Ravi, who else in the story can you think about that may also have a kind of an identity crisis, right? Who else in the story that has this element of identity crisis? That's the first question to ask yourself. All right.
Yes, doctor.
The second question is, what has what have scholars in the past said about K.S. Maniam, about cultural identity crisis, about the Indian diasporic experience? So triangulate the Jamboard. Okay. So if I can make a suggestion right now,
Yes, doctor.
I would recommend is the Jamboard open?
Do you want to share your screen, Dr. Rai, for the Jamboard?
But did I open one yet? Oh yes.
Yeah, you give a link
Yeah.
in the chat box.
I gave a link and then I sent it again. Okay. So this goes with everyone. This goes to everybody in terms of how you approach your research. Okay, so circle. Can I draw a circle? Okay, so I'm just going to kind of visualize, as I do, I want you to kind of visualize your own, in your own research, every one of you, as you know, sorry, no, transfer, yeah, okay. As I do for Salim, this kind of questioning, I would like you to also engage with it yourself. So okay, so Salim, you talked about the first issue you talked about is if you can in your own space, you know, if you have a piece of paper, draw 3 circles. So
Yes, doctor.
the first circle is about cultural identity crisis, right? The second
Yes.
circle is about the Indian diasporic community. And the third circle is about the corpus of your choice, which is K.S. Maniam's The Return. So your research is focusing here. Your research is focusing on, it's not a nice one, brush. Okay, let's try again, a nicer color. Oh no, okay. Yeah. So your research focuses on the overlapping of the 3 issues that you've got. You've got issue number 1, let's call it X. Issue number 2, let's call it Y. We're being very mathematical right now. Issue number 3, we call it Z. So you're not exploring everything about X, everything about Y, or everything about Z. You are only focusing on this part, this component here, the overlapping. So what's the first thing to do? This is your proposal. So once you have this proposal now, the first thing to do is to go online. I like to use Google Chrome when I'm doing my research because I feel it's more comprehensive. So you said Indian diaspora. You said
Yeah.
cultural identity, and you said KS Maniam. Okay, so these are your three key variables. So let's see the kind of things that I get. So you have cultural identity in KS Maniam's Another Corpus in his play. You have the state of diaspora in the fiction of K.S. Maniam. So Peter Wicks is a scholar who has done a lot of work on Maniam. Even when I was doing my PhD, I had to read a lot of Peter Wicks' work. And then you have diasporic imagination in K.S. Maniam's text. Then you have Shamini Gabriel from UM, who looked at diasporic translocation and the multicultural question, looking at K.S. Maniam's corpus. You have Susan Phillips, also from University Malaya, looking at diasporic spaces in K.S. Maniam's other corpus. Then you have the portrayal of the Malaysian Indian diaspora in K.S. Maniam. So you get the point. The theme of Indian diaspora, cultural identity within K.S. Maniam's corpus is very, very well researched, right? So, and even our own Dr. Shantini Pillai's work, looking at and see. So, in order to find the niche with Dr. Shan's work, despite the fact that she has done a lot of research in Maniam's, looking at Maniam's narrative, to find a more original perspective, you start to think of comparing. So Preeta Samarasan's novel against K.S. Maniam's novel. So you start to find a new way to create a kind of original perspective, right? So another thing to also consider is one of the words you used just now. If I'm going to start a different search, okay? You use being, becoming, Stuart Hall's very, very seminal work. Let's do that with KS. Okay. So the element of being and becoming, at least from the title, if you look at it, it's not there. Okay. This idea of being and becoming, there's one here, ZK Abdul, hybrid or reinvention. And then you've got another one, KV Dominic et al., looking at this idea of multicultural ethnic identity, paradox of being and Maniam's becoming. So the point I'm making here is when you have a proposal like this and you've started having a kind of an idea in mind, this is the journey. You go back and forth from the proposal to the research online, looking at what scholars have done, then coming back to the proposal and then going back to the drawing board, looking at what's available. You do this many, many, many times. Okay? So this is part of the journey, part of the process. The reason I'm emphasizing this is because a lot of the times you read a text and you get a kind of an inspiration. You get your light bulb aha moment because you think, oh my God, this is so good. You know, what I'm thinking about must be so original because this is something I am thinking about. Then you start to do a simple search and you realize 100 other people have been thinking about that even 10 years before this, right? So now you might feel disheartened. You're like, I don't think so, you know, but I really want to say this. I really want to say what I have to say about this. So now the point that you can look at is number one, when you read those journal articles, ask yourself, as you're reading through it, ask yourself, which character have they focused on? Have they focused on the central character, meaning Ravi? If it's Ravi that they have focused on, your paper start focusing, your research should start focusing on other characters. Don't focus on the same character, right? That's number one. Number two, what is the methodology that they used? right? Whatever the methodology that they choose to use, for instance, being and becoming, whatever methodology, othering, marginalization, recognition, other aspects of diaspora, whatever methodology they choose, don't choose that. Go choose something else. Then you can find something original. Do you understand? See, when you are doing this final project, one of the exercise is for you to start to think as a researcher. In order to be a true researcher, one of the first thing you have to do is whatever I say, whatever I develop, I want to try to get it published. Even if I don't publish it now, even if I publish it only 5 years down the road, right now I don't have the time, but it's okay. But in order to be able to get it published, you must say something uniquely new or original about the corpus, right? If you are not able to, don't use that corpus. Simple as that. Meaning, if the text that you have chosen, you are not able to say something new because a lot of things have already been said, don't use that corpus. Because as a member of the editorial board myself, when we get journal articles to review before we decide to send it out for a review as editorial board members, first thing we do is we scan and see whether or not the content has anything original to contribute. If it doesn't, we don't even send it to reviewers. We decline immediately, right? Because journals they do not want to commit to your paper if they don't see any contribution that you are making to the body of knowledge in that area. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to think about. And the second thing is consider also what is the text speaking to you, what is the text telling you personally, right? I give you an example, like when Shahira asked Dr. Shan, oh, okay, never mind, the recording is here. Hopefully Salim will catch up. But the point, do you all get the point that I'm making? Yeah? Okay, cool. When Salim comes back, I will catch up with him. Okay, so who wants to go next?
I can, if nobody.
Can.
Okay, so I have a paper. Okay. Apa tu? Yeah, so because I have Ronggeng Ronggeng, right, Doctor? Short stories. Right? I also have Dina Zaman short stories with me, and I have seen this feminine passivity in the female characters, obviously. That I do want to probe, but then again, when I read some of the stories, I am very much interested in the assertive women instead, instead of the passive female characters. I'm not sure if it's too ambitious to go there because given the amount of short stories that I have with me. But yeah, what I have so far is like opposing feminine passivity and then like assertive women in the 21st century short stories collection in Ronggeng Ronggeng, maybe. That's like my initial idea lah. And it's not much of what I want to prove, but I want to see the traits of feminine passivity or because I'm not sure yet, or the assertive woman portrayed in the short stories, like how those traits are resulted from cultural norms, because the short stories are happening in obviously mostly kampong area, but I do also want to see because in Ronggeng Ronggeng you have female writer that writes from a setting of modern day place, and I also I might wanna my scope and limitation would be either Dina Zaman short stories or Ronggeng Ronggeng, and if it's Ronggeng Ronggeng I will try to limit it to short stories written by women writers if I can.
How many
Yeah.
are there in Ronggeng Ronggeng?
Sorry?
How many
How many?
female writers?
Because in Ronggeng, right, doctor, I don't want. I try to limit to 21st century. So, because it's 1959, about, I would say about 3 to 4, 3 to 5, 3 to 5. But if women writers, it would be very much sikit than the other. Because
Okay.
or
So
else,
how many stories are there in Ronggeng?
okay, it has, I think, 20 plus short stories, but this one is from 1959, so I don't want to take that. So maybe, I think probably 5 would be okay. 5 would be okay to have from women writers, or else I would have to take from Dina Zaman short stories only. Yeah, so I'm not sure yet which, but the area that I will, search on would be feminine passivity or assertive women. Yeah.
Okay. So Salim, I'll come back to you in a minute.
I'm so sorry, doctor, for what happened. The line cut off. I don't know.
No
It
problem.
happens,
No problem.
Yeah, and I got your point, doctor. Just sorry to interrupt you, doctor.
Yeah.
You mean I have to go through all these, articles and find something new, which hasn't been mentioned before? Isn't that what you meant, doctor?
Yes. Find an original idea or thought that will allow your research to be original. Otherwise, you are doing more like a literature review rather than a proper research, a critical research.
For example, if they were talking about the character of Ravi, I have to choose another character in this case.
It's not as simple as that. You can still work on the character of Ravi, but you may want to compare Ravi with someone else in the story, meaning you may want to look at, for instance, somebody from Ravi's generation, someone similar to Ravi's generation, but from a different class or from a different background, like Menon's son, for instance. Or you may want to look at Ravi and compare Ravi to his father. Or you may want to look at Ravi and compare Ravi to his siblings. So that you are able to find more original ideas to talk about or to share. Otherwise, what you will share is not original or anything new. So much so that the research doesn't come across as a critical research. It comes across more as you conducting a literature review on past research, meaning the data, the findings will not be new. Do you understand?
Doctor. Inshallah, I'll try to, during this week, I'll try to go through all these things and keep you updated with the final, decision on the title of the research, doctor.
Good.
Inshallah ta'ala.
Thank you. Inshallah.
Thank you, doctor. I'm so sorry for what happened and for interrupting, doctor.
No problem. So Shah, okay, let me think. What did I want to say? Okay, I know this may look like an egg, but it's not what I'm going for. Okay. Shah, can you see what I'm sharing?
I can see the color blue, turquoise.
Yeah, this is color by numbers, but this one is color by something else. I'm not sure what yet. So this bit in the middle, if you like, that will be the text, whatever you decide to work on. Okay. The more important thing for all of you, the more important issue for all of you is not the micro level reading that you will be doing, meaning the close textual level reading that you will be doing. That's not the most important thing of this project. The more important thing is the macro level, the bigger circle that you are trying to create from this reading, the impact of this reading to society, the implication of this reading to your understanding of the author. The author defines social reality. the implication of this reading to how this particular author is viewed in society. For instance, when you say feminine passivity, so you may want to talk about the feminine passivity in like a novel, a few short stories, whatever, right? But that's not the point of the research. That's not the point of the project, or rather it shouldn't be. The key point of it as literary researchers is what is the impact of this research to the society, to the understanding of this particular writer's way of approaching her craft, his craft. Exactly like what we did just now with Mr. Azmi when we were talking to him, when we were having a dialogue with him about how he approached storytelling, how he merges his past with his present, what went on in his life, and how he uses it as a muse to motivate him, to help him tell good stories, to engage his audience and readers. So you as a researcher, you are in fact interested to know more about you're interested to know more about feminine. So if you like, the implication of your research is not about feminine passivity in this collection, but the implication of it in a particular work, in the work of a particular author. For instance, how does Dina Zaman views femininity, and to what extent is femininity or passive representation or feminine passivity, as you have coined it, to what extent does that form an important aspect of her representation of women characters, minor and major characters? So the implication that you are drawing from this research is more important. Now, if that is the case, what is the implication that you want to reach? Is the implication about a particular author? If that is the case, you want to choose one author's work. Is the implication about a particular corpus, meaning about this collection of stories called Ronggeng Ronggeng? Where is it? Okay, I googled Ronggeng Ronggeng just now. I couldn't find the number of stories. So the point is, what is the implication of your research? So in your case, Shah, you start with the implication, and based on the implication, meaning based on the macro level reading that you are hoping to arrive at, you identify the corpus. Okay, so if the implication is to identify this representation of this particular theme in this author's work, so first thing to do is feminine passivity and Dina Zaman. So notice not many research has been done on it. Some on Karim Raslan's stories, but Dina Zaman, it doesn't seem to kind of get hits on normal research, normal Google research. So then I will go to Google Scholar, because you can't tell for sure, right? So I would do the same thing. Feminine passivity and Dina Zaman. Let's see. Nope. There's something about feminist stylistics analysis, passive, chasing world of feminist post-colonial reading. Yeah, so basically there's not much that has been done on the theme that you have identified against this particular author. So that tells you that if your conclusion or the conclusion of your research is about feminine passivity in Dina Zaman's collection of, or in Dina Zaman's narrative, that would be original, meaning not many people have been talking about it from that perspective. So if that's the case, that tells you the corpus should not be Ronggeng. The corpus should be Dina Zaman's works. Maybe I Am Muslim, the collection of writings, or maybe any other works by Dina Zaman. Does that help, Shah?
Yes, doctor. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, just by looking at Salim's research and Shah's research and how it can help, help you define your scope, you can start to see that you may be interested from the macro level, meaning I know what I want to say. So maybe you have a personal statement that you want to say about either Malaysia, about Malaysian writing, about Malaysian writers, right? Or about a particular Malaysian theme, right? Because you're Malaysians, except for Salim, all of you will have something pertinent to say, right? So you may start with the macro. Then you identify the corpus. This is a little bit more challenging lah kan, because you already know what you want to say, but you haven't identified the corpus. Okay? But sometimes it's good to do that way, because then you can just Google. Just give me a second. Okay. Okay, interruption again. Yeah, so one way to do it would be, I would say, feminine passivity plus Malaysian writing. For instance, if you have a theme that you want to talk about, or in Salim's case, cultural identity crisis plus Malaysian writing. Meaning, I have something I want to talk about because that's the theme that is directly close to my heart. It's something I really want to say something about. Put with a plus Malaysian writing. You might get lots of hits. The hits may be blogs about novels, book reviews. And then you can choose one of the texts and you can do a research on it. Okay, so if you start by looking at the macro, the big picture, and you've got an idea that you want to conclude, but you're not sure which text to identify, start there. Google the theme plus, just put plus Malaysian writing or Malaysian novels or Malaysian fiction. Then you will get lots of suggestions. Conversely, if you have a particular text, like for instance, I really want to write a novel. I really want to write a novel, banyak lah. I want to write a paper on the Garden of Evening Mist. But I haven't figured out what exactly I want to work on. So what's my path? I have to go online. I have to read as much reviews on the book, past research on the book, then identify a niche. So the journey is a little bit different, but it arrives at the same conclusion. You get to say something about the text. Either you begin by wanting to say something about the text and you find the text, or you allow the text to inform you. Does that make sense, everyone?
Doctor, thank you. But I have a question. Sorry, guys, for taking your time. I have a question because because the theme should be feminine passivity, right?
To know, because you said feminine passivity. I didn't.
Yeah. But because I do want to look at it through cultural lens, I'm not sure if it's possible.
So
because
then-
it's gender, right, doctor? Like feminine. So I'm like quite confused here. Or is it too much?
Then look at feminist scholars like Bell Hooks, because these scholars do not, their research is at the intersection of culture and gender. It's not as if gender can be separated from culture, right? You're absolutely right. Your sense of femininity is constructed by the culture and society of your time. So you cannot say, oh, I'm talking about gender, I'm not talking about culture. You can't. So you're in fact looking at intersectionality perhaps. So you may begin again at a different point of departure. You may begin by looking at certain scholars that problematizes intersectionality of identities. Like Stuart Hall does not problematize gender. His is predominantly culture, diaspora culture, even minority experiences. Someone like Bell Hooks, she problematizes it from a more cultural, being African American, but she also has the sexuality, being homosexual and all that. So the intersectionality between sexuality and gender and culture, right? So you may find a concept by someone like Bell Hooks, and then you may find a text to suit that. So there lies the originality, because it's like you're matching two individuals from very disparate societies and you're putting them together. For sure it will be original. Okay, all right, who's next?
Thank you very much, doctor.
I can go next, I think. Because what I'm doing is not in the same wavelength as Shah, where I'm looking, instead of looking at the feminine, I'm looking at the hypermasculinity portrayed in MLE. But so I'm actually still finding the books that I want to look the theme hypermasculinity to, but I have several books that I'm looking at right now. First, my initial thought is I wanted to implement the concept of man box and hypermasculinity, because according to man box, the more there's 7 pillars in man box, and the more these pillars apply to the male characters, aggression is coming out from the man box, and hypersexuality is connected, hypermasculinity is connected to aggression as well. So I'm trying to piece those two together, but I'm still like, how do I piece these two together? So, but then I also have the thought or the idea of looking at how this hypermasculinity transcends over time, because I'm planning to take K.S. Maniam's The Return, the character Naina, in representing hypermasculinity, and also a more 21st century male character. That character is I'm still searching for, but for now I'm reading The Weight of the Sky by Hannah Alkaf. I'm trying to find the hypermasculinity in here, but I'm still looking for it, obviously. But I felt that it's like too ambitious. That I still don't know whether I can actually put everything together. But that's basically what I had in mind. Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so I mean, yours would be, if I may, so yours would be, you've got a particular issue or theme in mind, right? And you call it, say, hypermasculinity. You've got a particular theme in mind. The challenge now is to ask yourself, what's the corpus, right? So when I Google hypermasculinity, can you see the screen?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. So when I Google hypermasculinity and Malaysia, I put Malaysian fiction, but the Google search is like, do you mean Malaysia fiction? I said, okay lah, you don't want grammatically correct, fine, Malaysia fiction it is. And this particular author, S.A. Osman, 2021's work came up a couple of times. So first of all, you want to read that article, okay? Because the scholar looked at young adult fiction, Malaysian young adult fiction. Okay, so that's the corpus, if you like. So that particular author, his or her corpus was young adult Malaysian fiction, looking at hypermasculinity. And then beyond that, this idea of hypermasculinity was also discussed back in the 20th century. I think this is a book, Gender, Modernity and the Nation in Malaysian Fiction. So you may also consider that. So first thing that stands out is that this idea of hypermasculinity, at least within the canon of Malaysian literature in English, is still relatively new, except for this one author whose works get cited a couple of times in 2018, 2021, and again somewhere. Oh, just that twice, yeah. So when we talk about masculinity, it's toxic masculinity that seems to come across. So masculinity tends to be seen more as a pejorative concept as opposed to something that is celebrated, you know. So first thing to do, I would, as I read this particular author, Osman, 2021, for instance, I would look at his methodology. So keeping in mind, hypermasculinity is not a literary concept. Yeah, it is a concept taken from gender studies. It is a concept taken from sociology, maybe even cultural studies, maybe even psychology or psychoanalysis. Maybe it's a merging of various theories and concepts. It is not something that grew out of storytelling necessarily. So you want to look at the particular author's work and look at the methodology that was taken. First of all, how was hypermasculinity operationalized? Meaning, what was the definition of hypermasculinity? And how was it used as a lens to study the corpus? Then you may just take the same methodology and just change the corpus. That will make it original. So when you are interested in something new like this, it's easier to find something new to say because not enough has been done on it. Does that make sense?
Yes, Doctor.
Any questions?
Because I was thinking, right, if I were to apply this and then comparing it to, I'm not very sure whether it is necessary to compare the hypermasculinity portrayed in the early days and also in the current moment. So because I have my eyes on Tuku Halim's book because there's like a lot of elements of hypermasculinity portrayed in one of his books. I checked at Kinokuniya. So I was wondering, is it okay for me to focus on only like one author instead of like comparing it to another one?
Oh yeah, but because this is a final project. This is not your thesis. Even if it was your thesis, I would say one text is more than enough. But the one text is not one story because Tengku Halim writes short stories, right? So maybe his anthology. Yeah, maybe that would be something. And you know, even if you say, for instance, you want to expand on this research for your final research for your thesis, you can do that. So you say, okay, for this research, you're working for this project, final course project, you're looking at one anthology. Then for your thesis, you may say you want to look at maybe two anthologies. You can do that. So you expand the finding for this research into your final thesis. You can do that. Okay, as long as you are continuously expanding on the body of knowledge in this area.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome. All right, who's next?
May I go next?
Please.
So I had in mind to do to initially do the Garden of Evening Mist because I want to explore like the representation of Malaysia's multicultural society. But then I thought like because there were so many how to say food references in the Garden of Evening Mist, I don't know yet if I wanted to kind of like cut it down to how multiculturalism is represented through food. And if that's the case, I might want to put in another novel, The Sum of Our Follies by Shirley Kao, because there's also like abundance of food references there that I find interesting and how it represented like Malaysia's multicultural society. So like it's between that. If I'm studying because just in the Garden of Evening Mist, there's also a lot of like representation of multiculturalism, but not just in food. Also by saying like the mosque, how to say the buildings architecture, how Malaysia have malls, we have churches, we have temples, and also besides food, the languages also there's a character who speaks multiple languages like that. So I'm not sure yet. It's between those two, whether I'm just studying the Garden of Evening Mist or I need food as a theme and doing the Sum in our Follies as well. Yeah.
Okay. Again, back to what I said to Shah, Lisa. In your case, you are also looking at this idea of not just this one. So in your case, you're also looking at when you say multiculturalism, representation of multiculturalism. Let's change it to blue. Okay, when you say multiculturalism in a particular author or a corpus, first thing to ask yourself is that what is the definition of multiculturalism as you understand it? Is it enough for the author to just put in some Malay names, Chinese names, Indian names, some words like la, put some instead of toast, bread and butter and toast, you put roti bakar. Does that mean he's representing a multicultural landscape? Meaning that's all Maniam needed to do to make the return more multicultural, so how do we understand? So in that sense, first thing to do for you would be to identify other researchers that looks at this same approach, that same sense of using multiculturalism or using ethnic cuisines as a way to create a more multicultural landscape. What else must the author do in the story to connect food with the storytelling, right? The characters need to engage with one another, and the elements that you have identified, food and so on, these are elements that help make the story, right? And without them, the story will be half complete. So that is the bit that you want to study, and in order to do that, you want to know you're basically looking at narratology, narrative techniques, how the writer uses these cultural elements to tell a story, right? So what you want to do is look at other research that has the same methodology, take that methodology and apply it on the corpus that you have chosen. And I would say choose just one. Don't go, don't go over. If it's Shirley Cao's work, fine. If it's Tan Tuan Eng's work, fine. But for a final year project, because if you think about it, you're looking at about 20-page essay, right? The first third would be introduction, literature review, maybe methodology. And then the second and almost the last third, 2/3 of it will be your analysis plus your conclusion. So in the analysis, we're looking at around 7 to maybe 10 pages on analysis. If you have 2 corpus, you will not be able to spend the 7 to 8 sufficiently on both corpus, unless the scope is very, very narrow. So you're only taking one component of the story from story A and another component from story B, because the element that you are focusing on is a minor element in the story. But if it is a major element and you really want to show how that element is being used to create this diversity in representation of the country and the people, then you really need the entire space for that novel, and bringing in a second novel, you will have to dilute your discussion, that you are only touching surface level of one novel and then you quickly have to go to the next novel, right? So I wouldn't narrow my scope that way. I wouldn't narrow myself in that way, without allowing myself the freedom to just explore the text. But first thing to do is find out what methodology is being used by other writers and other scholars on this corpus, on this methodology of multiculturalism in storytelling, and then use the same methodology. But it's feasible, definitely feasible.
Thank you, Doctor.
And you may also, because you're working, your MPhil research is on this, so you might as well use your MPhil corpus, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, don't stretch yourself too much. As it is, you've been doing great. You're participating in this class even though it's not compulsory. You're auditing it, but I think for your final project you can dip into your own research, your own MPhil research. Just take one component for this particular project. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
All right, who's next? So it's only Elia and Ruby left, right?
Can I go next?
Can.
Okay. So my topic is also about gender, but I'm planning to do the representation of female characters in a domestic sphere through the lens of a male writer. But Doctor, so I'm planning to analyze K.S. Maniam's work, and specifically his short stories, because I feel like his short stories are more relevant to my topic, because there are a lot more portrayals of female characters in domestic sphere as compared to his novels and his plays. So do you think I should not just focus on his short stories and incorporate his other works too, or do you think I should incorporate another male writer, meaning compare K.S. Maniam and
one tip I would say to everyone is, one way to identify the corpus is to focus on a particular anthology, an anthology that is available. So for instance, Maniam's stories were published in this anthology published by Scoop Books. This was
this one?
Hunting the Tiger?
Oh no. Okay.
Not Sensuous. Is Sensuous Horizon, is that an anthology of short stories and plays?
Yeah, short stories and plays.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, because my copy is in my other office, it's called Hunting the Tigers and Other Stories, I thought, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But in this collection, Sensuous Horizon, how many short stories are there?
4.
4. Okay. So you want to look at gender representation in the domestic sphere?
Specifically female characters.
Female characters, yeah. So if you had a particular anthology of stories, then in your corpus selection, in your paper, in your corpus selection, then you will identify, this study focuses primarily on K.S. Maniam selected short stories as published in this anthology. Yeah, so that becomes the limitation of your research, but it's also the scope of your study, meaning Maniam has published numerous stories in other publications, but this corpus focuses primarily on this particular anthology. Right, so it's a lot easier to make reference to the corpus selection, which stories are you looking at, and all the rest of it. Okay,
Doctor.
yeah. But Haunting the Tiger, it is a collection of short stories, so that would have more stories, right? And the reason I'm saying that is because when you have more stories, you are able to make more impactful statements about gender representation in this one writer's writing, right? In his repertoire. Similar to if you say The Return, if you took maybe the first 30 pages of The Return only, and you disregarded the rest of the story, that's like saying, based on those 30 pages, you want to make general statements about this particular writer. But if you had the entire novel, you will be able to make more conclusive statement about the writer, right? This is the same thing. So if you only took 4 stories, can you say a lot about the writer, right? As opposed to when you use the entire collection, for instance, Haunting the Tiger and his other stories. So another suggestion would be, if you are interested, maybe you'll be interested to read his third and final novel, Between Lives, which I personally feel is his best work on women. I really, really enjoyed that novel. Because I felt like finally he gave voice to women in its entirety, not like he gave voice to the stepmother in The Return, because even in his second novel he didn't give much voice to Rajan's wife, and even in his plays the women characters always came across as somebody who he was having a struggle with. He was like struggling to understand them. But his third novel came out in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. But his third novel, I felt he came to a kind of a resolution or a kind of a closure in himself, and the way he represented Selema, the grandmother character, and Sumitra, the young woman who's about your age, 20-something, professional. But the way he kind of like pitted them against each other at first, and then as the story progressed, both learned to understand each other. And in them doing that, as a reader, you read that and you think, okay, this is what Maniam is going through. This is what he is himself experiencing, trying to get into the minds of women. Because in his first novel, his grandmother was almost like put on a pedestal. His mother was completely silent, right? So it was very much extreme. Either he thought so highly of them, or they weren't in the story. His sisters were not in the story. His mom was not in the story, right? Only the male characters seemed to be important enough, except for Miss Nancy. But in his third novel, there is a kind of a difference. So Elia, my suggestion is your methodology needs to be sound, as I have said with everybody. But if you came up with a corpus that is more impactful, potential for you to publish the paper later in your career path is stronger. But if you came up with something right now just to finish the 40% assignment, you can, right? But if you ever thought, oh gosh, I really want to publish, I want to get some scholarship going in my CV, which paper can I dip into it from my assignment that I can publish? If you do, I personally feel, if you do a more impactful collection of his work, it's easier for you to later maybe, work with somebody and say, I want to work on this towards publication. Can you help me? It's a lot easier rather than you have to start from scratch with the corpus in your analysis. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Doctor, you think it will be a good idea if I were to compare The Return and Between Lives?
No, just choose one.
Just choose one. Okay.
Just choose one. Novel, Between Life. Okay, first of all, Between Life is an easy read, tapi it's very thick. Okay, but it's a very easy read. Honest to goodness, it's a very, very easy read compared to The Return, because you will be able to understand Sumitra's character. Because she's modern, she's wearing all this, office clothes, and then she goes to visit this woman to evict her from her land. And then the woman's like asking, "Where is your outfit? Why are you wearing this?" Like, like grandmother talking to you. It's like, "Awak pakai macam ni, tak pakai baju kurung ke? Tak tahu pakai baju kurung ke lah ni?" That kind of a treatment, making you kind of, so Sumitra starts off resisting, like getting really annoyed, and so you will be able to get the story, and it's written in a very the narrative is very easy to read, even though it's a little bit thick. I enjoyed reading it. In a far country was so tough because of the stream of consciousness, right? So I would just say choose one, and what I do is, as I have suggested with Salim and Shah and the rest, go online, put the theme that you are interested in. When you say gender, domestic sphere, and KS Maniam plus KS Maniam, see the kind of hits that you get. What kind of corpus have people been using when it comes to KS Maniam's narrative? Chances are it is short stories, it is his plays. Between Life, maybe not. Maybe not many people have done. And that will give you the way in, if that's the case. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome.
All right, Doctor. I'll just explain to you what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I am. So this is my corpus. This is Cik Husna Azhari's The Rambutan Orchard. In it are, I think, about 6 stories. So it is basically about her experience growing up in rural Kelantan. A lot of nostalgic and spiritual connection with the orchard, the lands, the ladangs, the kebuns, and whatnot. So I'm planning to look at it from the lens of equal criticism. It is something that I just discovered last week, because I've been doing gender for almost every other thing. So I think I want to do something that is different, something that is new. I am still I just downloaded a few books on eco criticism, but it is basically unpacking.
I'll send you some stuff that I have published with my PhD student a few years
That is
back.
great.
But on Pablo Neruda's works, the
That
Latin
is wonderful.
American, works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also look at. I'll send you some stuff. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Doctor. So yes, trying to unpack humans' relationship with the surroundings, either nature or man-made. Perhaps I can uncover some, I don't know, symbolism there, because
Yep.
Cik Husna, she's very symbolic
Yep.
in her writings.
Yep.
So that is what I have right
Okay.
now, Doctor.
Okay. Cool. All right. So with I think everyone's done. Okay. Okay. So because as I'm listening to your ideas, I'm thinking about the Young Scholars Graduate Seminar that we are planning for January. Okay. So don't worry. I will make sure you are ready before you present. I'm not going to kind of just throw you into the deep end, because when you look good, I look good. When you don't look good, I don't look good. Because so I want to make sure you look awesome. Okay. So and I would like to invite students from both from India, because I have a PhD student who's now a lecturer in India, and also from Jeonbuk University, National University, South Korea, because I have a friend there whose student attended some of your presentation the last time around, the war narratives. And I've told him already, Professor Lee, I've told him, and he said, yeah, he looked forward to it. So once I know what you are working on, I will put together a kind of a tentative theme, right? And a poster, and then I will send it out for participation. So far what I'm hearing is with Salim, you are looking more at a cultural identity level. Shah, Aimi, Elia looking more at a gender level. Lisa looking more from a multicultural level. and then Ruby looking from an eco-criticism level. So I like the kind of a range of themes that we are interested in. So I'm gonna, right now I'm not very inspired because it's been a long day from morning till now. So I don't have any ideas right now, but I'll come up with a kind of a general theme, maybe storytelling, something about storytelling and storytellers in Malaysian fiction. Something. Oh, that's a good one actually. That just came. Okay, storytelling and
You go,
storytelling.
Dr. Rai.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Because I may also want to invite Cik Husna, for instance, Ruby. No pressure, but I may
No
also,
worries. Very honored, very honored.
yeah, I may want to invite, because I want that link between the writers and the students and the research and the corpus, because you want to show that this is a kind of the conversation is alive. What you are interested in and what the writers are writing about, it's constantly evolving. So the author defined social reality is as important as the reader defined social reality, because you as a reader have your own horizon of expectation, right? Then you come to the text, you demand certain things from the text. Sometimes the text tells you this, but sometimes the text doesn't. There is a gap between what you know and what the writer is talking to you about. Ruby is from Kelantan, so the rambutan orchard will be, maybe you will be able to see something there that the rest of us from non-Kelantan readers might not be able to see, right? So similarly with Maniam's The Return, when Dr. Shan came and talked to us about it, she had so much insights into the text that I did a PhD on Maniam's novels and I didn't know about, right? So it doesn't mean my reading is not original. So if Salim is coming from a non-Malaysian, an outsider perspective, it doesn't mean his reading is non-original. It just means he will have an original perspective to share, whereas Malaysians will have a very insider perspective, right? So I just want to kind of give you a heads up. Once we are more confirmed, more ready, I will call out. If we have to push it to the exam week, it's okay. If we have to push the seminar to early February for exam week, just to give you a whole month to prepare, that's okay, right? So I'm going to make sure you are ready, but keep in mind this final project, you have two assignments. One is the abstract and the other one is the full essay. All right, the Young Scholars Graduate Seminar is just the cherry on top. That's it. It's bonus brownie marks for you. Okay, opportunities for you to shine, for the world to know, oh, so these are the awesome students, So next week, I would like to see you, but with a more defined updates of your proposal. Okay, so what I mean by a more defined update, I would like, if possible, a draft of your abstract. Okay, the abstract should contain the gap in previous research, the key objective of this research, the methodology, maybe the findings, maybe not. If you haven't reached the level of the findings, that's okay. So, but the first three, what is the gap in previous research on this corpus you have identified? What is the objective or objectives of this research? And what is the methodology that you plan to use? Okay, so I'm looking at around 120 words, more or less. Okay, so of course the corpus will also be stated lah in your abstract, kan? So the analysis hasn't been done, so I cannot expect the findings to be there. But later, when you're done with the analysis, that will be incorporated, maybe 3 key findings and a conclusion. That whole thing, the abstract, will be uploaded as assignment 2. Okay, so you're working on the first third or half of your second assignment, the abstract. So next week, I will open the class slightly early. Maybe we do 1 to 3 instead of 2 to 5. Okay, or if in the mornings I'm free. If any of you want to meet me in the morning, we can do that as well. But if we do 1 to 3, it will be like this. You get to hear each other's session. Is that okay?
Okay,
Okay.
Doctor.
Any questions?
I do, because this is like I so am not pro in gender. This is like my first time, because you mentioned intersectionality, right, Doctor? I think that is very foreign to me. So if any of you guys have like um not framework, like theory that that you know of, that I may that may help me, please do share.
Sure, sure. Yeah, this
Okay.
is a collaborative work, because when you are doing that for someone else, the knowledge gets back to you as well. But Shah, before you even go into that, my first thought would be do something that comes naturally. Don't force it. Meaning, if it is something that you really want to say something about, you will be able to find it. But if it is something that you're pressing on yourself, you may find yourself cornered by that, so I would go with
True.
what comes naturally, or maybe in your theory class, that particular theory seems easy for you to understand. Go with that. Like, for instance, if you ask me about Marxism, I'm like, oh my god, it's just a killer to me.
I won't.
I cannot digest that. But we had a scholar here who passed away, since my boss. She's a Marxist scholar, and she's like that when it comes to Marxism.
Is it Prof. Zawiya,
Prof.
Doctor?
Zawiya,
I
exactly.
just read her book. I think she just converted me, Doctor, to be
I
honest.
know. But
Powerful woman.
right, but I cannot for the life of me seem to grasp that. But I think the theory needs to speak to you in a way that you say, okay, I get this, I understand this. Same with myth criticism. I love myth criticism, and I think I can get cultural studies, gender, but Marxism, Allah Akbar, just killed me at my graduate class. So yeah. So Shah, that would be my word of caution. Go with
Yes,
something that
Doctor.
comes naturally. So first thing to do, look at other journal papers. What is the methodology? If that makes sense to you, just take that same methodology. Khalas, done. Okay, don't kill yourself doing this. It's just life
Thank
is
you,
too
Doctor.
short.
That is very helpful.
Any other
Shah,
question?
I actually found like a few books that say something about the female gender, because I'm looking at hypermasculinity, but all they talk about is the female gender. So I think I filter out the books, and because there's a book
Yeah.
about the adat and also the
Yes, please.
female gender roles.
Because
So I think I'll
my
send that to you.
thank you, because I really like culture more. But I'm not gonna like separate it,
No, so just do
Right.
culture. If it is culture, then go for culture.
Okay, I'm indecisive. Yes, Doctor. Thanks. Thank you.
Aimi, my MA student, I'm not sure whether you know Mariam. Were you here when Mariam Azizan did her masters? It's a couple of years
No,
back. Okay.
I don't
She
think so.
looked at masculinity in Fantastic Beast, because she was my supervisee. We're working on a paper on that as well. So I'm going to ask her if she can email you her master's thesis. So you may look at the references and look at the methodology and see if it makes sense. You may find that useful as well.
Right,
don't
thank you
don't
so much,
never
Doctor.
ever work from scratch. Never work from zero. Always, stand on the shoulders of your giants, those who came before you. Rather than you have to start from scratch and then you climb the mountain yourself. Why? Right? Yeah. Any other question?
Shaira, since you're studying like gender and culture, I think there's a paper, because I read KS Maniam. Somebody did a research on third world feminism in selected stories, including KS Maniam. So I think they had built a theoretical framework around it. Just a thought. It might be relevant to you since you want to look into culture.
Brilliant.
Yes, please. I will text you.
Brilliant.
Yeah, Doctor. Speaking of like the theories, are we expected to come up with a theoretical framework of sort?
For journal paper, no. For a journal paper, it's more about just overall ideas of the theory, right? And the methodology. That is the clue, the important part. So when you read other journal papers, usually they will have a section on methodology. They might call it thematically something else. They might not call methodology like that, right? But basically, how will the corpus be studied? Not qualitative, quantitative, but textual analysis, right? So what lens will they use? That is the part of the methodology that if you find useful, you may replicate that. But yours is more, your master's, your MPhil is more a kind of a sociological, cultural studies type of a work, not a pure literary criticism, right? You can do that as well. You can still take the same methodology.
Okay.
But yours will not be looking at audience response, but you're looking at text. Yeah, actual stories. Yeah. But I want to hear from you next week. So if you find that writing of the abstract, you just can't get to that level yet, you just need to kind of talk these things through. Yeah, no problem. But the end goal is to write the abstract. That will be the final goal for assignment 2. Okay. Once you have the abstract, the writing of the paper should be a lot easier, because you look at the abstract and you say, okay, literature review, these are the things I have to expand on. Methodology, these are the things I have to expand on. And the analysis finding, these are the things I have to prove in my text. Okay? Any other question? It's been a very fruitful discussion. Initially, I thought, I told Dr. Mel, because she's got a family emergency, so she can't join us. I told Dr. Mel that this will probably be just for half an hour or so, but I'm glad we kind of like went into it in detail, because I think I want you all to not just have the product, the final project, but also to learn the experience, the knowledge. What exactly does it entail when you write an article like this? What does it entail? So all the different diagrams that we kind of drew out just now, those are the fundamentals. Once you know the fundamentals, you can work on any paper, any research work in the same way, approaching it the same way. Okay? So thank you so much, everybody. It's been a good session. So one more consultation before we end the year next week, inshallah, 1 o'clock. So either from 1 until 3, I will open that. Or if any of you really need to see me early in the day because you can't make it for some other reason, that's okay as well. Okay, so thank you so much for making time. So inshallah, I will see you next week. And in the meantime, if you've got questions, you want to message me in between, you still can. Okay?
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you
so much,
Thank you so
everyone.
much, Doctor.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Stay
Thank you so
safe
much.
and take care, everybody.
Bye.
Assalamualaikum.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.